All right, everyone. Welcome to ShipStation's webinar with Zapier on Zapier and other automation capabilities. We have one of our friends and good partners, DataAutomation, and they're going to give this presentation today. So we're pretty excited to have them. They're kind of the experts in this area, and we're pretty excited about this topic as well because I think it affects everyone. My name is Jenny Wen. I'll be your moderator. I'm a partner marketing manager here at ShipStation. So I'm going to actually turn over this presentation to Will from DataAutomation to introduce himself. And then with that, Will, feel free to take over.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jenny. I appreciate that. Will Christensen here from DataAutomation. As Jenny mentioned, we are an automation company. So we focus on helping people take manual processes and turn those around and put out something that eliminates some of that copy and pasting headache, some of those manual errors. We're excited to be here today. So we'll kind of get started, and I'll introduce myself a little more and kind of walk through some of that. As you have mentioned, or some of our team members have mentioned, we are in the chat. So if you do have questions, feel free to put them there, and we'll try to stop and handle as many of those as we can, so that we make sure we get to everybody. Who is DataAutomation? So we're an automation and integration consultancy based in Athens, Georgia. We focus on automation and integration, like it says right there. So automation of manual processes and integration, helping companies like ShipStation connect to other platforms. My name is Will Christensen. I'm the founder here at DataAutomation, and we are an approved development partner for several SaaS companies like ShipStation. So we're actually an approved development partner at Zapier as well. That's a big part of why we're here, kind of working and representing, and why we're able to go through and connect dots here for you. We are a sister company to a company that many of you may know, Seller Labs. They're literally right across the hall from us. So Feedback Genius and some of those other tools, Quantify and Scope, we're very familiar with the Amazon Marketplace and other marketplaces, and very familiar with them. We're part of a tech conglomerate here called Roundsphere, where we build not only software companies, but consulting companies as well, as you can see. So that's a little bit of who we are and kind of how that comes into play. Our agenda today is pretty simple. We're going to help you identify what to automate and what not to automate. Obviously, there's a lot out there, and one of the things that we discover pretty quickly is, as we see things, there are definitely processes to avoid. How to automate, we're going to talk about that as well. We're going to talk about automating and what it takes to actually do that. We're specifically going to be focusing around Zapier, understanding how it works, what is Zapier, kind of giving you a view of that. And then we're actually going to go through and do some Zapier templates with you. So we're going to hands-on today, kind of connect those dots for you. So as we get going here, let's get to our first question: what to automate and what not to automate. This is a pretty key piece of the process. I'm looking at a manual process, and I'm trying to decide whether or not I should automate it. So if you're interested, feel free to throw some things in chat, things that you would consider, oh, this might be a good fit, and we'll kind of pick apart some of those and see, is this a good fit? So as we get going here, the first question I ask myself when I'm trying to decide should I automate something is I try to decide where the data is now. So for this automation example that we'll kind of talk through right now, One of them that we've seen be pretty popular is the idea of, I want to get a reimbursement. This is actually a live example we built for a ShipStation client. I want to get a reimbursement from my manufacturers. So when an order has items in it that match this criteria, I want to push them to a Google spreadsheet. And then I want to be able to hook that Google spreadsheet up to a invoice template, essentially, so that I can print off a PDF and send it off to all my people. So that's kind of the use case. So where's the data now? Oh, well, the data is inside ShipStation. Let's talk about the next step here. Where does the data need to go? It needs to go into a PDF that gets sent out to all of my manufacturers so that I can get a reimbursement. What needs to happen to the data in between? Well, it needs to be put into a big fat spreadsheet, and we need to go line by line, row by row, and kind of connect that up into a template. Okay, so getting down that process, what triggers the process to start? Well, what triggers the process to start for an order? Well, that's a customer who probably placed that order somewhere. Well, eventually that's going to hit ShipStation. And so in this situation, we're going to listen for a new order. Then we're going to ask, how often is the team currently executing this process? And the reason you ask that is because oftentimes, this is not a good fit, or this is something that is currently happening manually, right? You've got people who are having to manually create this invoice and send it out so that you can get that reimbursement. How much time is being used? This time question is very important, and the reason it's so important is because it's going to tell you how much budget you have to actually attack this automation. So you can kind of do the math. It's taken 5 of my guys, $15 an hour each, so that's 5 hours. So if I times that all out, I can come up with an idea of how much budget I'll save by automating this process and kind of trying to decide, what's this going to do after the part. So perfect. We've got a couple of polls that we're interested in. We're interested in having you kind of connect dots here. So we'll actually take a quick break and put those the first couple up there, if you would, for me, Jenny. That would be helpful. So first off, what type of company are you? So if you can give us an idea there, that'd be helpful. We'll give a second there, and Jenny, when you feel like you've got enough responses there, go ahead and we can take that.
Yeah, I'll give them a couple more seconds.
That's great. This is just going to help us as we pick out use cases. It'll help us make a decision on what direction we take things. Okay, perfect. So looks like we've got quite a few Amazon sellers and several manufacturers or drop shippers on the line. If you did answer other, we'd love to hear about kind of where you fit in the chat and hear more about that. Go ahead and hit up that second question that we had. So we'd love to hear more about where you fit in your company. And if you've got multiple people on the line, just choose whichever you feel like would be the best option there. Okay. See where everybody fits there. So it looks like most everybody's on the executive team or in the shipping and fulfillment space, which is perfect. That's actually we're going to address exactly where that's valuable. Okay, awesome. And the last question that we've got here, and we'll kind of get into that, is so go ahead and let's ask that last one. We're wondering if you're already on ShipStation already. So if you can help us understand that, that'll help us discuss a little more as well. And that'll wrap up our quick polls for the moment. We've got a few more coming up here that will ask you about things that you're most interested in automating. So appreciate your willingness to answer some of those questions for us. Awesome, great. So let's go ahead and hit this next stage here. So the big question we're asking is, should we automate, right? Some things thrive, other things, honestly, they can cause lots of problems if we want to automate them. And the reason we ask those questions is to try to decide, is there enough for us to do that? All right, so coming over here, what to automate? Where are we copying and pasting? If we're retrieving pricing from another competitor's website, that's a great place to automate. And one of the reasons why it's a great place to automate is because we are able to kind of connect dots there and easily grab that information. Automated notifications are huge. It's an easy way. So if you wanted to send an information to a Slack channel or an instant messaging platform about, how big something is coming through, that's there. And I do see I had a question come through chat. We'll answer that here in just a second. Where do we need to reduce human error? So if we're copying and pasting tracking numbers, are we sometimes fumbling the last digit or adding a space in there that's causing an issue for the notification when it comes back to Amazon? It's a good place to go. What not to automate? Let's talk about that. Here are some definite places there. So the question, I'll just answer this quickly. Can I automate splitting of multi-line orders into smaller shipments? That's actually a fantastic question. And I actually had another ShipStation client ask me exactly that. And I know that that's on the roadmap, but has not yet been put in there. That being said, Zapier actually can do a little bit of that, but you have to be a little bit creative about it. So Zapier can create new orders. So when that order comes in, you can push and pull things around. That one is one of the more complicated pieces that connect those dots. So yeah, absolutely can be automated, but it could become something that's rather difficult to take all the way to the finish line on your own, depending on how many moving parts there are and how many channels, what sort of conditions you have to put on there. So one thing that we recommend as we consider what can or can't be automated is, are there customer interactions? Like, are we building a chat bot that kind of talks back and forth with people when they come to our website? Are they going to be aware that that's a bot? And because they're aware that that's a bot, does that create bad feelings? Sometimes I've had clients where they come in and they want to send an automatic invoice. Well, as you know, when you receive an invoice, that generally means the work's been done. But a lot of times, whatever we use to trigger that doesn't actually connect those dots. Receiving information from QuickBooks or Xero, great one. That's a good example. On the other hand, automatic billing, like I mentioned before, should use probably some human interaction. So that kind of gives you an idea of what to automate or what not to automate. Let's get into some of the how. Before I dive in head first there, let me answer this other question here. So the question I have is, I need to send an email when a customer orders a custom product. It's tagged as ShipStation. So that's actually a fantastic example, and yes, totally automatable. You can connect ShipStation and Gmail and pick up that information and send it out when it's tagged, and kind of connect those dots. So we'll actually probably use that one as one of our use cases as we get a little deeper here to kind of show you how that would work. Okay, so how to automate. One of the first things that you need to consider as you're deciding how to automate is what's currently possible. What sort of native integrations? And so you'll hear this word: third-party integrations, native integrations, app store integrations. A native integration is generally an integration that's been built by the company that owns the SaaS platform. So a good example is the ShipStation Amazon integration. That is an integration that was built by the ShipStation team and is supported by that ShipStation team. So obviously in this situation, we're talking about more than one channel, but there are ways to use Zapier, for example, to pull in some of those pieces. So a native integration is one that's built by that team. And generally when there's a native integration involved, it means that there is an API. So let's talk about APIs for just a second. An API, if you've probably heard this term before, maybe you haven't, is an application programming interface. So that's what API stands for. And what it allows one computer to do is basically talk the same language. So Amazon has an API, ShipStation has an API, and Amazon ShipStation reaches out to Amazon and says, hey, what new orders do you have available? And then pulls in all those orders so that they come down. And if something changes up here, then it gets pushed down. And that's all done through APIs. Just because it has an API doesn't mean that it's going to work perfectly, because the same way that you would want a feature built inside ShipStation to do something specific, you can also build a specific function for the API. So it may not be included yet in the API. We're going to talk about that here in just a second as well. Okay, so what's my toolbox look like? I've got different platforms. I've checked that they have an API or that they have native integrations. If there isn't a native integration, well, then you've got to kind of look for a third-party workflow platform or something that can kind of help you connect those dots. Here are some examples. So Zapier is a prime example. That's one that we're going to talk about today, and we're actually going to get our hands dirty a little bit with Zapier. Another one that comes into play is Amazon Web Services. Amazon allows you to host a lot of custom code, kind of connect a lot of dots that way. Oh, my apologies. There we go. Another one here, Dexy.io. That's a web scraping service. It's pretty powerful from the standpoint of being able to go and grab information. This is a good example of one where if you're trying to watch your competitors' prices, they'll allow you to build a bot that actually goes out and grabs that information for you. And you can kind of hook that up to other places and set notifications around it, that kind of thing. Another one here is Workato. They're pretty powerful in the realm. They're more of an enterprise solution, but they've got a lot of really custom workflows, and they handle some of the use cases that Zapier can't. So we love Zapier and we use it constantly. It's probably one of our, it is our main tool to use for automation for our clients, but we also are aware of many of these others and use them as well. Last one I wanted to mention here is IFTTT, if this then that. They're more focused on consumer, but they are coming out with more B2B integrations all the time. So wanted to jump down here and answer a couple of quick questions here. Tracking numbers to update in ShipStation. I'd like to go mark those as shipped. Yeah, that's a great example. You can actually create listeners that listen for a lot of those emails and then kind of extract those tracking numbers out. It can be a little tricky to extract the tracking numbers out, but that's a great example of something that can be automated using Zapier, especially if the email that you're receiving them in is a Gmail account, because Gmail's tightly integrated with Zapier. Can I automate to export orders with costs included shipping cost and order profitability, Skew and profitability? Yes, we'd probably need to get into a little bit more there to kind of connect dots. So can you automate exporting of orders? Yes, it's whether or not that information is actually available already in the integration that's been provided inside Zapier. So we can look at that a little bit as well. One thing to note is there are pieces of functionality that I'm saying, yes, that's automatable, that I'm aware that's available via the API that might not be available right out of the box with the Zapier integration that's there. And the cool part about this is we can actually give the ShipStation team feedback about what's currently possible or not possible, and then we can update that integration to have what it needs. All right, so let's talk about Zapier, and we'll keep answering these questions as we keep coming down here. So Zapier breaks down flows into 3 components: triggers, actions, and searches. And I'll be honest, triggers, actions, and searches are kind of the crux, or the, like, that's what my business is built on. So we're built on triggers, actions, and searches. And when you think of a trigger, think of a listener. So I have an employee who listens for this item to come down the conveyor belt, and they know if it's a blue item, I should put a red sticker on it. That would be considered a trigger. The action of putting that red sticker on it is literally an action, and you're adding to the item that's blue. A search would be where you say, okay, I want you to look for that blue item, and then I want you to look behind you to see if there's another blue matching item. And if there is another blue matching item, then go back and put that sticker on there. So that's kind of a piece that goes in there, and we're going to talk about triggers, actions, and searches here a little bit more, but I wanted to give you kind of a brief idea. So Zapier has 1,000+ integrations right now, which is amazing. They're already integrated with a lot of different platforms for you, which makes your job a little easier. All right, what is Zapier? How does it work? Let's get into some of the nitty gritty here. So it's an automation and workflow tool. You'll notice right here at the top of the page, we've got Gmail, we've got ShipStation, we've got Google Calendar, Trello, Slack, Airtable, a lot of different platforms that you should be familiar with that are kind of connecting the dots. And they've even got, webhooks, which is a way to integrate directly with an API to kind of connect some of those dots. All right, coming down the pipe here, how does Zapier work? Like I mentioned before, you've got triggers, and I do see some more questions coming in. When we get to a stopping place here, we will answer those. So here we've got triggers, okay? So your trigger is your listener, and in this situation, it's Salesforce, and I'm gonna listen for a lead, and then I've got multiple actions. So that's one of the cool things, is you can kind of daisy chain some things together. So the lead comes in, and what are the components of a lead? Well, you've got an email address, or with an order, it might be an order number. You can use that information in a follow-up task. So, talking about our use case earlier, if the item that's there needs to be emailed out when a tag comes in, we can kind of connect dots. So here's the send email, create card, add or update subscribers. So you could even connect MailChimp and things like that. Okay, so here are the triggers. These are the triggers that are actually currently available inside ShipStation, and they're really powerful. So anytime a new order comes in, you can trigger it. And it has this little instant trigger on here, this instant tag. That instant tag is actually very important. So the reason it's instant is because it's done through what we call a webhook. A webhook is the possibility or the capability for two computers to talk to each other instantaneously. So instead of one computer talking to the other computer and saying, hey, do you have anything new? Hey, do you have anything new? Hey, do you have anything new? The computer that's being asked if it has anything new, the first time it says is, hey, anytime you have anything new, send me a notification here. And so you kind of create a subscription between the two platforms, and it's instantaneous. As soon as that order comes in, they're going off and sending it off to wherever they need to go. So items shipped, same thing here. Item order ID, so this triggers each time you have an individual line item is created or imported. So the powerful part here is many of you were talking about, like, I want custom costs, or I want to put all of those line items into an invoice and track those pieces. You can do that down to the line item level to push those to the other platform. And then you've got order shipped as well. So item and order level triggers. Okay, let's talk about the actions. So this is actually copied right out of Zapier's interface. So if you're looking around on Zapier, you'll see something very similar to this. So the actions that are available at this current moment in time inside Zapier are to create a new order. So one of you was talking about marking it as shipped. That's possible via the API, but currently with what's available inside Zapier that's already been built is to create an order. So. All right, let's jump in here. And while I've gotten to this next page, I'll look at some of these questions. So can I tag orders in ShipStation based on the coupon code that was used? Well, let's ask our questions. Where's the data now? The data is inside that order. Where does the data need to go? Well, I need to pick up and create a tag based on that. I believe that actually may be possible via the automations that are straight up right inside your ShipStation account. So it's going to kind of depend on what's there. Just a second, reading through these. Okay. I'm currently using Zapier and ShipStation to mark orders as shipped in our BigCommerce store, which is great for items that we fulfill directly through ShipStation. But we have warehouses that provide us with tracking data in a spreadsheet daily. Great question. With the rest of the tracking info, is there a way to create a trigger for orders that are marked as shipped in ShipStation? Yes. So if you look at that last slide that we were just on, we can trigger right here. So you can see the item has been shipped. So if your warehouse is using ShipStation, you could pick that information up and put it back into orders in your system. This create order will sometimes update. It will sometimes kind of connect dots and go through there. So we can talk through a little bit more about that. But yes, that's something that is possible via the API, maybe not right through Zapier right yet. Okay, so let's talk about the workflow aspect of Zapier here. So a workflow is literally just like this. So you can see right here, add new ShipStation order to a Google Sheet or spreadsheet when that comes in. So a new order equals a new line in the spreadsheet, or post a ShipStation order to Slack, okay? So those would be considered workflows, and these are also considered Zap templates. The Zap templates are powerful because they give us some of the most common use cases, and they actually fill most of it out for free. It's easy to kind of connect those dots. So you can kind of see how that works and what kind of gets coming into play. All right, let's go here to the next step here. So let's talk about the components of a Zap. So we talked a little bit before about what a trigger is. We're going to talk about that a little more. So a trigger is that listener, right? So you got that conveyor belt, and you've got that individual that you're paying to watch for that blue item. Okay, so the blue item comes down the court, and they know, look for the blue item. Well, sometimes Zapier is actually not that smart. Sometimes the trigger doesn't include the ability to look for the blue item. So when it comes down the line, it just says look for every single item down the line. Okay, Zapier has what's called a filter, which we're going to talk about here in a second, that says only continue if the item's blue. The next thing you're going to do is you're talking about how I'm going to take that blue item and I'm going to put a red sticker on it. Okay, so actions create or update things in other systems. Okay, so that's an action. If you're going to create a lead, you're going to create an order, you're going to update an order. Those are all considered actions. Okay, coming down the pipe, we've got searches. So searches are actually very powerful. Searches are a way for us to look up to see whether or not there's something already in that other system. So let's say that you want to create an order, but you want to check to see if the order already exists, or you want to mark something as shipped or send an item to a customer, but you want to check to see if it already exists. A search allows us to go look for that item, and if it exists, do something with it. So it's a good way to stop from creating duplicate leads. If you were creating a connection between a web form and a CRM, you could look up to see whether or not that contact exists. And if it does exist, you can do that. And if it doesn't exist, then you can stop, not create that new item. Okay. Coming down our next section here, this is the filters. So filters are very important. So someone mentioned earlier, I want to be able to send an email based on when a tag is applied. So if that tag is applied, you're going to look at everything that's coming down there, and you've got to be able to read which tag it was, because you don't want it to go on every single tag that's applied, just the one you want. So that's what a filter would do to kind of that process. All right, I do have another quick survey here that I'd like you to take. And this is gonna ask really like what is the number one thing you'd like to automate? And it kind of goes into some of the questions that we've talked about. So we'll take a quick second to do that and kind of connect dots there.
All right, well, the poll results are up.
Perfect, thank you. So the number one result here is sending orders to another system and then retrieving orders from another system. That's great. So sending orders to another system, that's actually perfect. We have a good use case that we can talk about here in just a second that we're gonna show you how to use a template to send an order to a Google spreadsheet. So that fits right in there. All right, let's go down the list here. All right, so templates. I'm going to go through the process briefly here, and then we're actually going to go over and look inside a ShipStation account so that you guys can see a little bit of how that works or how to even use that template to make sure that we're connecting the dots most appropriately. So. Part one, and this, it is fairly complicated, but we are going to walk you through it. So don't be, don't feel too bad if you feel lost after you see these pieces here, because we are going to walk through it. So the first thing we got to do is choose our trigger application. And in the use case we were talking about, our trigger application is ShipStation. So we're going to take an order from ShipStation and we're going to put it into a Google spreadsheet. After we choose our trigger app, we have to choose the trigger. So the trigger is what you're actually going to trigger on. So sometimes if you've got a CRM, you can trigger on new account, new company, new lead. So in this situation, we're going to trigger based on a new item that has been ordered, or you could choose new item shipped. Then we're going to select an account and we're actually going to authenticate with that account, okay? Then after we've authenticated, we're going to define our parameters, okay? Then we're going to do a test step, kind of go through the pieces there. Then part two, we're going to choose an action app, okay? We're going to select an action, we're going to select an account and authenticate, and then we're going to set up the template. And we test that step, and then we turn it all on. So let me show you briefly. I'm going to open up my window here. And I'm going to open up my Zapier over here. Okay, so I've chosen, this is my Zapier account here. This is a great place to explore workflow ideas, exactly what Zapier says it is. So I've chosen Google Sheets and ShipStation as my two options that I'm connecting the dots for. As I choose those, I'm gonna choose which one of these I'm most interested in, right? So if I want to take orders from a Google spreadsheet and put them into ShipStation, I can do that. Or I can add new ShipStation orders to a Google spreadsheet. We're going to use this one because we're talking about exporting orders from ShipStation, putting them into another account. So here with this template, you can see it's got a lot of pieces that are grayed out here, but the big blue button down here at the bottom is what we're going to go and do. So it tells us how it works. A new order comes into ShipStation, then it adds a new row in a Google spreadsheet. Okay, so this is exactly the use case that I used for my client to help them get their pieces to kind of connect dots. I do see more questions coming in. We will get to those. Don't worry about that. So I've clicked continue, and you can kind of look for this blue button. So this big fat blue button over here, this is going to tell us, okay, the next thing we need to do is that. If you're on a mobile device or a smaller screen, oftentimes this will get a little bit tricky, but we found that it's totally doable, and you just sometimes have to scroll down to find where you can continue there. So I'm going to hit continue, and you can see here are some ShipStation accounts that I've already connected, and they're kind of go through. So you got ShipStation account 1, I can test that, and it goes through, cool. I can test that as well. I'm gonna click on connect an account here, and I'm gonna show you what you would have to do. So this is an API key that you need to get, and there's an API key and an API key secret. And you can see the ShipStation teams put in some pretty explicit instructions on how to get that. So you just go over to your settings tab, go click on API settings, and it's gonna give you an API key and a secret. You literally copy and paste those in the very first time, and then poof, it's connected. The cool part of what's there is once you've done that, you no longer have to do this again. So you're connected, and that's what I've done already here, right? So my ShipStation accounts are connected. Okay, so I'm going to select my ShipStation account. I'm going to hit save and continue, and now it's got some advanced options. Okay, so I'm going to click on show advanced options, and these advanced options, you can see that they're hidden, and that's because we're using a template. Okay, they don't want to confuse you by giving you too many options, so they allow you to hide those. Well, let's say that you only want to connect from one place to another. So you can see I've got some different manual orders that I've connected. So manual orders, please work. That's my developers are all about kind of connecting different dots, and they love naming things very interestingly. So as we connect here, you can see we've connected, and the test comes through. All right, we got it. There's a test order, it's come through. From this point, you can literally just keep pressing that continue button. But I do want to point out, I'm not going to open it so it gets anybody confused, but I do want to point out that you can view the data that's associated with that order, and kind of dig into what's possible or what's available there. We're going to hit continue, and we can retest if we wanted to get a different order. We're going to use that in our field mapping here in a second. So when I connect here, I gotta create spreadsheet row, and this is gonna go create a brand new row in that spreadsheet, and we're actually gonna map that out so that it goes to the right place. It's a pretty powerful process, because obviously, your spreadsheet could have anything in it, right? It could be a spreadsheet that tells us, we need to, you can track, think about it. What can you track in a spreadsheet? You could track just about anything. We're actually going to create our spreadsheet. And so this is important to understand. If I go through the process and continue with these dots, I'm going to close one of these tabs up here so that we're not confused. If I go through these steps and click on this next page, so it's given me a whole bunch of different options. So these are different Google Spreadsheets accounts that I've connected to my account. I can test here. And if I hit connect an account, it'll come up and it'll show me, oh, do you want to connect any of these, right? And there's different users' accounts that I've got signed into there. Now here, if I click save and continue, it's going to say, okay, cool. What spreadsheet do you want me to connect? Well, we haven't created our spreadsheet yet. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to call it ShipStation orders. Okay, it's important that you know what it's called, right? And that you get there. And then we're going to talk about, okay, well, what data do I want to send there? So let's say that you sent this to a drop shipper, or you sent this to a 3PL, and you wanted to say, okay, when the orders come in, they're going to come into this spreadsheet, you watch it, and we'll see it go through. So we go orders, right? And these are going to be, you're going to want to give them specific pieces. So there's going to be an order ID, and for them, maybe instead of order ID, it actually is PO number, right? Because a lot of them, they don't see that as an order ID, they see that as a PO number. So we're going to put PO number there. And then here, we're going to put the total amounts, so the total costs, or we'll do the item costs here. So item cost, okay? And you kind of have to decide, kind of what it is that you want to actually bring in, right? So, the item names, and we'll put in the Skew here, okay? So as we connect dots here, we're gonna map those things down the line. So here, I'm gonna hit my little button here, and you see right here at the top, it's got ShipStation orders. So I've found my ShipStation orders, and then it wants to know, okay, what worksheet? Well, there's only one worksheet here, so that's not gonna be hard for us to choose, but we need to pick which one it is. So here we knock on the door and it says, cool, there's sheet 1. If you had more than one sheet, it'll let you choose that. Now here's where the magic comes in. You'll notice that it pulled in exactly the fields that I just put in there. So the item name, the cost, and that actually probably is just gonna be name, not names, right? Because we're not gonna pull in multiple. And then the Skew. Okay, so here I'm going to start mapping these out. So I grab this section right here and I click insert a field. What it does is it opens up and says, okay, here's you had a ship to name of Tash Reed. You have an order number here. Okay, so PO number. All right, so let's say that your drop shipper says, I need everything that comes from you to start with these 3 letters, TYL. So everything that comes from you has to have these 3 letters at the beginning of it, and then you're going to put in, whatever you want the PO number to be. So you can actually map that out so that when it comes in, it'll always put TYL in there at the beginning. That's just an example, but that's how you can map things that come through. They have this really nifty preview, so I can turn on and off this preview and it'll show me, here's the field that I'm pushing over to Zapier. So this is static because I just typed it in, and this part is dynamic. And if I turn that preview back on, it shows me this is the order number of the order that we're using as a sample, okay? So we come down the list here and we go into item cost, okay? So we're gonna scroll down and we're gonna find, here's order total. Keep coming down here, item unit price, okay? So we're gonna put that in there. I'm gonna grab the item name. So we scroll down a little more and we're gonna try and find the name of that product. And in this situation, it could be empty. Well, Zapier has a pretty cool tool here where we can actually type in and say name, okay? So here's item name and it says NA right now. That's fine that it says NA. We just wanna map it once so that it works for us from here on out, okay? So now we've got the SKUs, okay, so, or the Skew of that item, and we can type it right in and say Skew. Okay, so this says item Skew and fulfillment Skew, okay, so currently one is null and one is NA. That means that my developer, when he created this test order, he just put in NA. Item fulfillment Skew, that's a separate field that's been filled out, right? So if you use that field appropriately, you could put in the right Skew for your drop shipper or your manufacturer. Okay, if you happen to have new fields, like let's say you came over here and you said, you know what, I actually want customer name in here as well. So that comes in, come back over here. You can actually hit refresh fields here and it will say, oh, you want customer name too. And so you can kind of build this field map out together and pull that in. And remember, you can just type in right here, it'll come up and say, all right, there's customer username, bill to name, that's probably what I want. So we go customer name. When I hit continue, Zapier says, okay, cool. Is this what you want? Do you want to send this spreadsheet orders to sheet 1? This is going to be your PO number. This is going to be your item names, and the item name says NA because that's what was in my test order, NA for the Skew, and then Tash Reed. So when I hit send to Google Sheets, this is where it gets exciting. We go back over here and poof, it's inside your Google spreadsheet, okay? This is where the roaring applause happens and everybody is excited because this is just as exciting as a football game. We just automatically put that in there. When I hit finish, I can go here and I can actually turn on this button, and now every order that I get in here will automatically get pushed over to this Google spreadsheet, and I can share that directly with whoever I needed to. Now, let's just think for a second, and let's imagine that you don't want every single order. Where do you want to go with that? That's where we could get into a lot more of the nitty gritty, and you can kind of add multiple steps or filters to kind of connect dots there. So let's head back to our screen here. So we've been through this, choosing a trigger app, selecting a trigger, selecting the account authenticate, defining the parameters, testing the step for the trigger. Then we've gone through the action steps. So selecting an action, setting up the template, testing the step, naming and finishing it. So now we have a decent idea of knowing how to identify what to automate and what not to automate. We also have a decent idea of how to automate from the standpoint of, there's lots of different tools out there. We know what Zapier is and how it works. And we also know how to build using Zapier templates. So let me answer some of these questions that I saw in here, and that's kind of what the next slide is all about. We're looking for something that will automatically batch orders for us. Will Zapier do this? Like all of this, item will automatically be created and create a shipping label and batch them. That way we can go in the next day and print them off. Good question. So the ability to automatically create a batch like that is not something that's currently available inside the Zapier app. That action wasn't in there. That being said, it may be available via the API. If it is available via the API, we have two options. We can actually reach out to the ShipStation team and get that on the docket for something that could be added to the Zapier integration, or you can pay a company to go in and integrate that for you custom. We actually have multiple people from the ShipStation support team who come to us to kind of help things like that go through. So that's a great question. Can we automate the cheapest shipping method upon the product being updated and sync it into ShipStation under orders waiting to be fulfilled? Great question. So the rate shipping piece or choosing like what's the lowest price and things like that, you'll notice that there was, when something comes in, you can automate the standpoint of knowing like where it's got to go from and where it's got to go to, but then pulling in the shipping information, you've got to get that information from another place. So you'd probably have to use something like Ship Engine and do some custom flows to choose that lowest price. Now, obviously, ShipStation has a lot of that capability inside it. When you go and choose and you click on that item, it'll show you all the different pricing options and you can choose the lowest one, but not right out of the box. That's a great question, though. Can you add calculation to a Zap for cost and quantity and get multiple quantity by that cost and put it into a field? Yeah, so you can take multiple pieces, kind of connect them all together, and then shove that all into one specific field using Zapier. You'd have to do probably a code step in between to do the addition, or you could pipe it into an Excel spreadsheet like we just showed you, and then have Excel do the addition. So great question and possible for sure. All right, did I miss any of those? I'm leaning on my team here to go through. So basic.
I think I see one that says we're looking for something that will automatically batch order for us. Do you see that one?
Oh, yep, I do see that one. So the batching, so it automatically creates all your shipping labels the night before. That was kind of what I was talking about before. Like if you're trying to get it so that it like selects them all and does the same as when you're clicking on that batch shipment, that's not currently possible via Zapier. It doesn't have that in there, but it may be possible via the API. So may be possible to connect those dots, but not with what's currently in Zapier. I do see one here that I missed. So basically, Zapier exports the data from application A to Excel and then exports the data from Excel into application B. Is that it? Great question. So in the use case that I just showed you, yeah, that's one way you could do it. You could make it so that your application B listens to that Google spreadsheet and pipes it in. Zapier is actually much more sophisticated than that. If your application B is already on Zapier, you could connect those dots and go that way. So in future webinars, one of the things that we plan to do is kind of help you get an idea of what's totally possible by showing you, well, what happens if there's not a template, and kind of connecting some of those dots. Any other questions for us based on what we're there? Can I create an automation to send an email to me if an order has an exception during delivery? Great question. So in the order shipped phase, you can get a shipment notification. If there's an exception during the shipping process. I know that's available via the API. I don't know that that action has specifically been brought out. This actually takes us right into a great place for us there. DataAutomation is actually offering free 30-minute help sessions for anybody who'd like to. So if you go to dataautomation.com/ShipStation help, it will actually redirect you right to our webinars page. And on that webinars page, Jenny's putting a link to a Calendly where you can literally book us right then to give you a 30-minute help session where we can talk about your specific use case, walk you through that process. So you just mentioned, when there's an order exception during delivery. That may be possible via the API, so we could listen for that specific item and make that part of the process. I don't know that it's possible right out of the box with what ShipStation has, because you can only listen for a new order or a shipped order. They don't have a new shipping exception yet. But part of the reason that we're here today is to talk about some of what's out there. We have one final quick survey for you, and we've got our contact information there as well. We'd love to hear from you what you'd like to see in future automation webinars. So if we can skip right to that last question. Yep, there we go. So we're talking about doing a second webinar that's, how to build more with what's there, or how to troubleshoot Zapier. Those can be webinars all of their own, just because there's so much to go over. More about web scraping, more about IFTT, or more about dropshipping automation, and what might be possible there. So we'll give you a quick second to fill that out. And we're excited to learn more about your use cases, learn more about what it is that you're looking to do, and how we can help you take some of the manual processes out of what's slowing the business down, and maybe not allowing you to scale the way you want to. Perfect. Well, we appreciate your time and are looking forward to seeing many of you on our next webinar, and that's it for now.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Will, for being our guest speaker. I think it was a great webinar, and there were a lot of questions. If we somehow missed your question or we didn't answer it fully, feel free to book that 30 minutes with Will, or send ShipStation or DataAutomation any questions that you have. Like Will said, the webinar page that you signed up through has that 30-minute consulting session for you to sign up with, as well as if you are not a ShipStation customer and you're looking into a shipping solution and trying to figure out if it works for you, we also have a free trial for you to sign up on that page as well. So thank you everyone for joining. We're going to respect your time and close out this webinar. Have a great day.
All right, have a good one.